The relationship between humans and dogs is a tale as old as civilization itself. From ancient wolves, who first wandered into our ancestors' fireside glow, to the devoted companions curled up beside us today, dogs have always found a way into our hearts. This bond, built on centuries of mutual benefit and deep connection, speaks to an unspoken understanding between two very different species. For us, dogs are more than just pets. They are family, healers, and steadfast friends. They greet us with unconditional love, offering solace during our hardest days and joy in our simplest moments. Their presence can lower our stress, ease our loneliness, and remind us to find the beauty in the present moment. Their ability to read our emotions and respond with empathy is a testament to how intertwined our lives have become.
My mother was an alcoholic, and because she was trying to mask her feelings of hallucination and whatever, I think she was channeling other entities, and it just haunted her. But then 11 years later, my father died by suicide. He shot himself in the heart in the shower, and I just remember going into his room. I asked him if he was going to kill himself, and he said no, but I knew down deep inside at some point it would happen.
Our guest today is a gentle soul with a warrior's heart. She has journeyed through profound loss, childhood trauma, and the complexities of mental illness with her family, yet merged with deep compassion and unwavering connection to the unseen world. Her story is one of transformation, and finding healing through nature, exploring shamanic traditions, and sharing her truth through film and writing. Welcome back. I'm John Moore, your host, and you are listening to the Urban Grief Shamans.
I was sitting out in the back of our house, and I was talking to his best friend, who's a preacher, days after he had passed. And he wanted a certain way on how my brother's funeral should be. And these two hawks are sitting in the tree, and they were screaming. I mean, screeching. And I knew that was my brother. Intuitively, I knew he was saying no.
This is our guest, Rebecca Shaper. Rebecca dedicates her life to guiding others on their healing journey, drawing from her own profound experiences of trauma, loss, and spiritual awakening. Through her work as a filmmaker, author, and spiritual seeker, she shares stories that inspire resilience and hope. Join us in our conversation.
When I reflect back in my childhood, and after what you were saying, I felt a guardian angel with me. I felt, because it was almost like a knowing what was going on with both of my parents. And I understood it at a deep level. I knew this is happening for a reason. At the age of 15, I'm not sure if you were the caretaker of your parents, but I saw some very traumatic situations, but I always felt protected. I had a very inner strength within me. When my brother, Carl, who was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia, he left in 1977? He left for 20 years. And he was homeless, but I always knew he was alive. When we found each other through a miracle, that's when the healing really started with him and with me. Because he was oldest, I felt like he took on a lot of the trauma. And I took on a different type of trauma. We just dealt with it separately. I went one way and he went homeless. He was the catalyst of the film, A Sister's Call. Without him, it never would have been made. And I wouldn't have been able to have the opportunity to help so many people who've gone through such tragedies. But I also felt like it was a soul calling. It wasn't me. It was my soul saying, you need to do this. It was almost like my brother knew when we met when we found each other through a miracle, he knew the same thing, but we never really exchanged that purpose with each other. We just did it. And it took 14 years, but I feel very blessed for everything that happened in my life because we've been able to help people.
No, I just wanted to if we could step back a few steps as we move back to your younger years. But you also had mentioned, was it both your parents committed suicide?
Both died by suicide. My mother was an alcoholic and trying to mask her feelings. I think she was channeling other entities and it haunted her. 11 years later, my father died by suicide. He shot himself in the heart in the shower. I remember going into his room, the bedroom, talking to him and asking him. And I said, I need a sign. Plus, I asked him if he was going to kill himself, and he said no, but I knew deep inside it would happen. So,
was it triggered just from his being an abuser, or?
He abused me, and I found out later that he abused my older daughter, which was devastating. He suffered with PTSD from the war, and I also found out that he was abused by a scout leader.
How did you, when you were younger, cope with the abuse?
I remember I would kick him out of the bed, and he would come in. And I would just I'd kick him out of the bed. And finally, honestly, I don't remember how. I think I just told him to stop. And then it stopped. And unfortunately, my mother never knew because she was in heavy drug medication. But yeah.
Was shame a big burden for you at that age, or was it buried?
It's interesting you asked that. I never felt shame. I didn't feel guilty. I didn't think it was my fault. I just knew I had to do what I had to do. That's the best way I can explain it. It needed to stop.
How do you, when you look back on your life, I mean, it's an odd way of looking at it, but all our challenges seem to be for some kind of a purpose. The grief that we carry is that grinding stone that hones us into diamonds, if we have that inclination.
Yep.
How did you look back on that younger self?
Are you asking how I look back at myself growing up?
So those early life experiences, how do they contribute to who you are now?
Oh, wow. A lot more compassion for people, a better understanding for people, really at a deep, deep soul level. Intuitively, I can sense where a person is. It gave me a lot of experience as well. I'm very grateful for it. The callings I've had in my life go back to how I grew up. You can take it on and use it to serve others, or it could really debilitate you. I chose to serve others through my experience. I have no psychology degree. It's just all experience. It gave me a lot of strength.
In your life with Call, did you have much time together as teenagers before he left?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Yeah, and I could see the anger with him, but then when he left, I was still in high school and he went on to college. And then I got married later on, and then he took off and left for over 20 years, back and forth, but I never saw him.
What was that relationship like when you were still in school?
He had anger towards me.
How did that affect you?
I had a great high school years. I mean, honestly, my high school years were phenomenal. So I was very grateful for that. But when he disappeared, I always knew he was alive and we found each other.
Mhm.
It's like our relationship became very close. His anger was gone.
You reunited, you're saying.
Go ahead.
What filled in the relationship for you after that, the coming together?
I saw the person within, I saw his soul, and I saw my brother who he really was down deep inside. His anger was not towards me, it was towards my parents. I wanted to show people that even though he was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia, he had a soul and he was a gentle giant.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember times he would call me on the phone and ask about, hey, Rebecca, how's your daughter? It's almost like he was very telepathic and could pick up on energy. She was going through struggles herself. He taught me patience. He taught me patience.
When did you start writing the book about him? When?
The film came first,
Mm-hmm.
and that exposed everything as I was growing up. And then I was done. And I had another soul calling that I needed to write the book.
Mm-hmm.
He had already passed in 2012, and 2015 was when the book was published. And he was telling me, Rebecca, you're not done.
What was said in the book that wasn't said in the film?
It was a lot more spiritual. It connected nature into it and how he would be present with me when I would see hawks.
Mm-hmm.
I'll never forget one time. I'll give you a very good example. I was sitting out in the back of our house, and I was talking to his best friend, who's a preacher, 2 days after he had passed. And he wanted a certain way on how my brother's funeral should be. And these two hawks are sitting in the tree, and they were screeching. I knew that was my brother intuitively. The funeral plans were his favorite songs. My daughter, who was sitting in the kitchen, and she came out and she goes, Mom, what is that noise? So she witnessed it as well. I knew that was him communicating. At the funeral, we all went to our beach house. My husband, my 2 daughters, and myself. There were 9 hawks flying right above us. I just get tears and goosebumps because I love how nature speaks to us if we just listen.
The thing that made it such a delight meeting you for the first time was your joy. And we had a good laugh, and I really had a good time.
Yes.
It wasn't a long time, but I certainly enjoyed myself. I was even receiving a little energy from you, a little power energy, a little top up. I was just wondering, do you cry often?
I have, yes, I do. And I'm not always hippie hot or joyful.
No.
Yeah, there are times when I have bad days and I think, okay, what's going on? And I go within.
Do you think our grief makes extra room for joy if we allow it?
Sure. I think I understand what you're saying. Yeah.
The reason why I mentioned it, I know I've said it before on a podcast. This man who teaches a lot of grief workshops, Francis Weller, was telling a story about this woman in an African. He was surprised at just how beaming this lady was, with smiles and laughing, really present. But the village was obviously a place that didn't have a lot of wealth or abundance. He was wondering why she's so happy. Why is she laughing so much? When all around kind of looks a bit dark. And she says, that's because I cry so much. And I've never forgot that quote of his. And I don't know, I find a lot of joy and happiness, but a lot of laughter comes my way, even with the people that I meet or myself. And I think that growing up with these different periods of grief does work.
Yeah, absolutely.
So after your brother's passing, there was a bit of time there. I'm trying to figure out, when did your shamanic path start? or was it Gus who came first?
Well, I always wanted to learn about shamanism ever since I was little. And so when Gus passed away, I think it was a month prior is when I started with the Peruvian shamans in Peru. And I just felt like I was home. And Gus was, then when he passed away, it broke oh my gosh, that was grief. That hit me hard.
So you had started on your path before?
About a month prior to his passing. He passed December 7th, 2023. And that was worse than losing my parents.
Yeah.
He was like my soul dog. He was my co-pilot. There was just something extremely special about both of us. It's almost like we knew each other in past life. He knew me, I knew him. I could look at him, he could look at me, and we could speak to each other telepathically. When he passed, I still get choked up. He taught me a lot on the other side through Sunny, who was the pet communicator. She would communicate to my dog, Gus, in the afterlife. And some of the messages that he would reveal to her is that I needed to get going on my shamanic practice. And he was very adamant about me. I had some roadblocks in the way, and I'm still learning a lot. It's kind of a slow process for me, but I absolutely love it. And he was pushing me.
Yeah. What was the draw for you?
About
to turn to shamanism.
It's all about nature.
What was it you were seeing in nature?
Wow. I feel like nature speaks to me. I speak to nature. It's an energy that I just feel such a connection to. Everything, the trees, the birds, the animals. I've been totally blessed by the messages I've gotten ever since I started the documentary. I would start getting messages from nature. That's pretty much when it really started with me, when that was 2000. To me, it's being present, being aware, and just absorb yourself in all the beauty and listening. Just listening, because they want to help us. I got so many incredible messages, and all throughout, and in the book, and then Gus.
It's funny, my thoughts that I always had, or certainly believed in, was that the universe was always whispering. You just have to be still and open. But at that time, it was just like, you just have to listen. They're talking. Things are whispering, you know? It took me a while to really get drawn into it. I was resisting for a while, but you can only push back so much when the obvious is just hitting you on the head, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. They throw little pebbles, and then you get a brick, and then you get really hit on the head. It's like, okay, I'm going to have to show you this to really understand what we're all about. And Gus came into some of my initiations too. I had to be initiated, and he was there with me during the initiations. So.
You mentioned that you and Gus were on the same path together. Being on a shamanic path isn't so much about healing others or doing other things for people or animals. It really seems to come first that the soul is trying to reach out for you to take notice of this strong connection that we have with each other and with so much more. When we're in bad ways, grieving, just so much discontent, whatever the feelings may be, it's really that we need to take care of that first to open us up so we can really start walking that particular path by healing ourselves somewhat further along.
Yes, I feel like nature opened up my heart to really heal. I just feel like that it just expanded my heart and the grief, and it was, I definitely feel Gus was the forefront of that.
Yeah. I can remember sleeping one night, and I woke up. This is, again, before all this happened. And I think it was like 3:30 in the morning. And I was woken up by a robin calling. just outside the window. I turned to my wife because I woke her up. It's so unusual to hear a songbird at 3:30 in the morning. The first thing I thought of was this fellow. His name was Terry. He was a good friend and a bookkeeper for us who had died suddenly. I just knew that was Terry coming by to just say hello and thank you, actually. And I'll bet everybody who's listened to the podcast could think back of times when they just were quiet and something touched them, something called to them. They saw a sign in something.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
To me, it's like, just like you. The robin came at 3:30 in the morning. You're like, but you're aware, people, that you just got to be present, open, and listen.
Mm-hmm.
Listen. It's like music to my ears when I wake up in the morning because I love to see everything wake up and hearing the birds singing. It's pretty amazing. They just do their thing and go with life.
So, talking about spirits, my partner had this little Mickey for 17 years. He had some seizures, and after 17 years, his back end decided not to move. My partner, Patricia, called in a vet who goes around euthanizing animals, dogs and cats. And Patricia saw her picture in a web page, and she knew right away that this is the lady to do it. And funny enough, when she came, she was just so quiet, soft, a real soft energy came in with her. And Patricia got to hold on to the name of the dog, Legend. I called him Spike the whole time. I don't know why she went through the procedures and whatnot. But when she was all said and done, we were just making some small talk. It turned out that she herself has been through the basic shamanic work and then also came back to the foundation's death and dying. And we all shared the same mentor. The lady's name, Nan Moss, a wonderful shaman, taught for, I think, I don't even know how many students she may have had. I've heard thousands kicked around, but that might be a bit much, but a wonderful teacher. She's retired now. But the coincidence, as people would say, that a shaman walks in to do this job for us and that we all know each other through Nan.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I understand it's hard, and thank goodness you had that opportunity to be with the dog, when it passed.
So I just want to step back again. Met an animal communicator, Sunny Man. Can you share a little bit of that relationship and how effective is she?
I found her through Karen Anderson, who wrote the book, Pets in the Afterlife. And she's written probably 2 or 3 and incredible pet communicator. She no longer takes anyone, but she trains people. So Sunny was one of the ones she had trained through this email I had gotten from Karen Anderson, mass email newsletter. And I thought, okay, I'm going to contact her because it was probably a week after Gus had died. And she lives in Australia. I told her about Gus and I said, would you do a session? Would you please talk to him and let me know if there's anything that he wants to say? So one thing led to another and she did 10 sessions with him. She's an incredible animal communicator. She also does past life. And so he did well.
What is a session?
Oh, okay. So what she does is she communicates with him first. That was her time. And she would call in on him, or he was very persistent in wanting to talk to her. And sometimes when she was doing her website, he would show up on her website because he wanted to be the first one on her website. And so she would come back to me. She said, he really wants to talk to me. So what she would do, she has quiet time and Gus talks to her and she talks to him, asks questions. And then after that, everything's in transcripts. She transcribes everything. And then she would call me up and tell me about the session. After each session, I would read over what Gus had said and the questions she asked, and I would comment on it everything flowed together. He just knew where I was in my life at that time. I knew he would reincarnate because it talks about him in the book that he would come back, but different. He would come back and be with me and help me, guide through me through my shamanism. And I got so many signs about him coming back. And now, present today, through so much synchronicity that led up that we have a dog named Zeke. He's now 7 months old from the same breeder, and I see so much of Gus in him. And it has definitely filled a void in both my life and in my husband. And it was just a knowing that he would come back. And the sessions that Sonny had with him, he would always talk about, he would come back. I will come back. And he talked about certain situations at the beach that there was no way she would have known. Then we decided to write a book together, and then things didn't work out. And Gerald helped me. He's the one who wrote my first book. Gerald helped me write the book. It's a 3-way conversation in the book, and it talks about everything.
Since we're talking about the book, tell us more about the book. And then we'll come back to talking about the Quiro natives. Was it a Peru that you were working with?
Yeah, they're the last Apache family in the Inca.
Why don't we talk about the book and Gus and give us more detail in the book? I'd like to talk more about Peruvian shaman.
Okay. Is there something that you would like to ask me that is coming to the forefront with you?
I want to know, like, a book has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And I was wondering if you could just kind of use those brackets to just kind of talk about different parts of the book that really stand out for you, like your favorite parts. So other people can get a sense of, sounds like an interesting book.
Okay. Well, I will tell you one situation that happened. When I went to Peru in 2017, my husband and I went there with National Geographic. And on September 14th of 2017, I found this heart stone. To me, that was very precious. So when Gus was alive, he and Stella would always get up on the fire pit. They'd walk around and try to get chipmunks in the fire pit. When he passed, during one of my sessions with the Peruvian shaman, I took out a stone that I had found in Peru, and I accidentally broke it. And I was devastated. I thought, is Gus telling me my heart is broken? What is this? And I was devastated. The next day, I went down by the fire pit because I always feed the birds. There was a heart-shaped stone in the fire pit. And to me, that was like Gus saying, here's your stone back. So I've got a stone that was broken, but my husband glued it together. Here's the stone that was in the fireplace.
Wow, that is a heart shape.
Another story is probably a week after he had passed. I was on my computer, and he had such a big block head. He was a wired-haired Vizsla. And when I would take he and Stella, that's my daughter's dog, I'd take him on walks, and his head would bop up and down like bobblehead, the bobblehead. So I'd always call him, we'd walk and I'd always call him bobblehead. Well, when I was on my computer, I opened up the browser and I took a picture of it. It said bobblehead. And I knew that was him communicating to me that he was with me. And then the song Over the Rainbow by the Hawaiian guy. I can't remember his name. He was a big, heavy-set Hawaiian guy. And he sang that song, Over the Rainbow. You would know it if you heard it.
Okay. I'll look for it.
But every time I was grieving him, that song would come on. And I knew that was him communicating me, like, I am with you. There's so much that I could say of the messages I received from him. It It was incredible.
Okay, let's step back. I want to know how you found this Peruvian shaman family.
This is another story. All right. I got to back up here. That time when my husband and I, in 2017, went with National Geographic, we hiked from the lodge to Machu Picchu.
Is that like adventure tourism thing? That
Yeah, there was a group of us stay in this lodge, get up the next morning and hike to Machu Picchu. So prior to that, we had to stay in Cusco. And I knew there were shamans outside of Cusco. So I thought, you know what? I'm going to kind of a rebel. And I thought, I'm going to detour and find out who one of these shamans are. And I want a healing session. They took me and did a healing session with me. Then they brought me back to the hotel, and the tour director was a little wigged out, but everything was fine. Fast forward to 2023, I thought, okay, I want to do a workshop with the Peruvian shamans. It just so happened it was the same shaman that did the ceremony and his family. So that's how I got hooked up. I thought, okay, this is really meant to be. So there you go.
Do you remember his name?
Justin and Alejandro.
Yeah. No, the only reason I was asking because my partner, she's been to the same places. They did a lot of ceremony work. Just a group that another colleague of ours did a 3-year program with, and he does this traveling to Peru and Mongolia. And I forget where else, the Amazon. So it'll take up to 12 people, and they'll do all this exchanging of shamanic people with the Peruvian shamans. And they're just as interested in knowing how we do things and how we see things as we are of them.
Do you know who she was with in?
I'm going to ask when.
I would love to know. Yeah. It's the Paza, Apaza family. Yeah. Don Alejandro. Oh. He's the headmaster.
Yeah. I just finished a 6-month program with Alberto Velodo. He does a lot of Peruvian and Amazon teaching. He did a lot of studying with them for years. Yeah, it's quite a remarkable stories that he has. His organization's called the Four Winds Society.
Yes, I saw him at a workshop.
He's remarkable.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. Do you know Linda Starr-Wolf?
No. Who's
a shaman as well?
I know of him. I have a couple of books of his.
He's kind of my mentor.
Was he really?
Yes.
Yeah, you're hanging out with all the old Woodstock shamans. That era is the way I look at it.
Linda Starr-Wolf is. Yes, she was for sure. Yeah.
So was Nan. Sure. She was another lady, Elaine Digio. She worked with Nan a lot. And she went to Woodstock, her husband.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, just remarkable. Things that you studied. What can you touch on?
Different modalities on healing, like one with the chakra system, the other one soul retrieval, soul extraction. Let's see here, what else? Nusta, which is a female that works with the chakras in the rainbow.
The work that you did with the chakras, they call that illumination?
You bought their ribbons and you bought all the tools from them. And each chakra color, like the yellow or the red, represents something. And you ask the client prior to it what's going on, and then you work that certain color with them. So, and to do it a certain way.
Yeah. Do you remember how they did the soul retrieval? How they taught that?
Yeah, it starts with a ceremony. You get your cocoa leaves, and then you ask Pachamama, and then you ask for a picture of them when they were born and the place they were born. So those are the 3 things that you ask prior to working with the client. You do like a ceremony for Pachamama, and then you just kind of download like distance healing.
Yeah. Yeah. The remarkable work of the program that I went through with Alberto was kind of, there's a lot of similarities to what I was taught through the Foundation for Shamanic Studies. So much of the stuff that was different was quite different. There was some really good stuff that I've incorporated, and other stuff I thought, well, I like that, but I'm going to keep this other particular practice differently so that you can bring different philosophies or teachings together.
Yes, I don't stick to it completely. I kind of use my own intuition and intertwine what I feel, because I feel the body says a lot. The energy. And I start something, then I feel this doesn't feel right, and then shift it.
I think we're just about all out of time. Is there anything that you want to say at all, Rebecca?
I just hope that people can resonate with this book if they feel a calling to read it. There's so many beautiful messages.
Okay, the title of the book
is Roses to Rainbow, My Dog Gus in the Afterlife. What helped me grieve through losing him was going through all the memories, like walking on the beach with him, doing our adventures. That really helped the grieving for me. I would offer that to people. They're always with you and they want to be with you. If you're in deep grief, they don't show up. But once your heart is open and you're processing the grieving, they will send you messages. You just got to be quiet and listen and tune in. Because I've experienced it. I've had just messages, and I've just been very grateful for the messages that I have received from him, because I know he's always with me.
Well, thank you.
Sure, and thank you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, it was a nice conversation, and I thoroughly enjoyed it, so thank you.
Oh, well, good. I'm glad you did. So did I. And you asked some very wonderful questions, deep questions, which I like. It had to make me think. Oh, wow.
Well, don't tell my friends. They won't believe it.
Well, I will tell them.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, John. Take care.
Bye-bye. Thank you for joining my conversation with Rebecca Shaper. If her story has touched you in some deep and meaningful way, I invite you to share this episode with those who may need a gentle reminder that healing is possible and that our loved ones in this life and beyond are always with us.